So I've just bought this plant knowing that it's about to die. This is an Aechmea Fasciata Primera. It's a type of Bromeliad. It maybe has a few weeks or even a few months left, depending on how I look after it and try and keep it alive for as long as possible. There is, however, a very good reason as to why I bought it, so it's not a waste of money, and I will talk through that in the video along with care tips for this plant as well as how to propagate it. So the Aechmea Fasciata Primera is a really popular type of Bromeliad, and you may have recognised it from this very distinctive flower stem that it has with the pink bract and the little purple flowers in the centre. These are not quite as vibrant as they were previously. As I mentioned, it's on its way out, so they've started to fade. And if I just turn this slightly and try not to hit myself in the face with it, this is also drooping away from the plant. So I'll leave it on there for a little bit longer, as it's still got some nice colour to it and the quite striking structure of the spiky bracts. But what I will do is remove this from the plant shortly, and then we'll just keep the leaves for as long as they stay green for. With Bromeliads, they generally have a set life cycle, so some will last longer than others, but they'll generally grow the leaves, then develop the flower. Once the flower starts to fade, that signals the end of the life cycle, and then they will usually produce offsets or pups to continue propagating itself, but the mother plant will then die as it is at the end of its life cycle. So that's exactly what's happening here. But if I just lift these leaves up, you can see, as I've just mentioned, this one has two really strong offsets coming up on the left and the right of the plant. So that is the reason that I've actually bought this. Knowing that this is going to die and this is going to go, I've now got potentially two new ones of these that are growing on either side. This was also significantly reduced in price, so it was $3.99 down from $19.99. With the right care, in a couple of years they'd have grown just as big as this and flowered too. So in my eyes, that's effectively a double saving, getting potentially two £19.99 worth plants for that $3.99 cost. So Aechmea Fasciata Primera are epiphytic plants, so they usually grow on other things, usually on trees, for example, and they're also known as the urn plant. So if you can see, many of them have this type of shape where the leaves come out in a centre and create a well or an urn or a cup, hence their name, and that's where they collect rainwater, debris, and gather water for the plant and nutrients, as opposed to the roots. They do still get some from the roots, but given their natural habitat, they are potentially up in the air on things that wouldn't have like lots of soil and things like that would provide all of those nutrients. They do get a lot of that from the leaves. And there's also the white colouring on the leaves, so this isn't actually a design feature. Although it looks nice, it's not actually a design feature. This actually helps it get the water and the nutrients into the plant from collecting it from up above. So with that in mind, when it comes to caring for this plant, it's a little bit different to your other standard house plants in that the watering, while you can water the soil, and you should keep the soil slightly moist, never soaking wet and never completely dry, keep some moisture in the soil, you would actually water from the top in the centre of the plant or in the urn of the plant and allow the water to sit there. So you create a little well of water and then the plant can draw upon that as it's needed. What you might need to do is sitting water is occasionally tip the plant gently to remove that water and replace it with fresh water, similar to what you would do with anything else you're keeping in water, maybe propagations for example. You need to change the water occasionally just to stop any bacteria or nastiness building up in there. And that might seem a little bit strange because when we think of other houseplants, while we might spray the leaves, we wouldn't necessarily leave them completely wet, as that can lead to things like mould and rot of leaves and stems. So in this case, this is what this plant is designed for, or what it's adapted to be able to do. So it's okay to leave that water in there. They do like, as I said, that extra moisture and higher humidity, so if you can keep it with other plants as well, that will help. And they do like a good amount of light, so maybe put them near an east or a west facing window so they get enough light throughout the day, more so depending on where you put it at different times of the day. So this is relatively easy to care for, providing you remember the watering requirements. It doesn't actually require too much more than any of your other houseplants, just a slightly different approach. As I mentioned earlier, they live for about 3 to 5 years, and when the flower comes up, they do last for a few months, so you get this wonderful colour and striking structure for quite a while before it begins to fade. And even when it does fade, it does still stay quite attractive, so you might leave it on there for as long as possible until it really starts to look like it is dying back. When that does happen, you can just cut the flower stem as close to the base as possible, and then you'll hopefully still be able to benefit from these wonderful green tropical looking leaves for a few months after that too, before they start to fade and die back. And when it comes to the pups or the offsets, these should start to come up when the plant is in flower or coming close to fading. You'll see them pop up around the mother plant in the pot. You could get any number of them, so we've got 2, I've seen them with just 1 in the shop had 3, so it really depends on how vigorous the plant is at trying to propagate itself in its later stages of life. With these you can leave them in the pot if you wish to do so and let the mother plant die back, and then just remove any remaining bits once that's done, and just leave them where they are if you want to. However, you will notice they're growing off at the side, so at the very edge of the pot, so it might be more beneficial to actually remove them and repot them. Alternatively, you might wait until the mother plant goes and then move them or sort of pop them back up but in the centre of the pot. They'll also benefit from that if there are more than one, as we've got here, as they can grow quite large, so we don't want to overcrowd the pot that they're in, so they will need to be potted up separately. Also, if we make a point of potting them up in the centre of the pot, because they can grow quite large and top heavy, they can become a little bit unstable. So if they're in the centre of the pot, it should give them more stability or security with the soil that's around them, as well as from the weight of the pot, if we can centre the weight of the plant in the middle of the pot. So now I'm going to talk through propagating these, and it's incredibly easy to do so. So I've just moved some of the leaves out of the way. Hopefully they'll stay where I've put them so you can see what I'm doing. With this is also where I'm going to get soil everywhere now. So I've just put some paper down just to collect any soil that falls off. So you might want to do the same if you are propagating your plant. Luckily the offsets grow very close to the top of the soil on the stem. So all I've done is just remove some soil from the base so we can see where the pup meets the mother plant. And if I just move this a bit close to the camera, hopefully it will focus on that, and you can see where that meets the mother plant there, just in the top of the soil. So now what I'm going to do is remove that from the pot. All I'm going to do is use a sharp knife, or you can possibly use a sharp pair of scissors. Just make sure that it's clean, and then you can use that to cut it away. And I'm just going to go as far down the base of the stem of the pup that I can, and as close to the mother plant, and carefully cut that away, and then we'll be able to pot it up. So here we have the pup or offset. So we've got the mother plant here and the new plant here. So in time this will become one of these. So this one just has a raw edge where we cut it. If I can show you on the camera, hopefully that focuses, and you can see all the new little leaves, the little points starting to come up around the base. So it doesn't have any roots on it at the moment. Even though it was slightly in the soil, it was getting all of its nutrients and so on from the mother plant, and as we said, it takes them from the atmosphere from the leaves as well. So what I'm going to do now is just put this in a new pot with fresh soil. So even though they do like to maintain some moisture in the soil, it does need to be very well draining soil. So I've just got a mixture of standard compost with some coconut coir and perlite in there just to help with the drainage, so it's quite a loose soil. And then all I'm going to do is make a well in the pot in the centre, deep enough to put the stem. So I don't want to completely submerge the stem, but it needs to be deep enough so that the plant stays secure. As we already mentioned, they can topple over, and as it doesn't have any roots at all, it's going to be less sort of secure or held into the soil. So I've just done that, and all I'm going to do is pop that in there and then firm the soil around it. So you'll notice it is still a little bit loose and moving about. So let me just pop this down and firm that around there. So this is quite dry still at the moment, or the soil is, so I'll give it a water in a second and help this settle into its new pot. And there we have the new Aechmea Fasciata Primera, brand new plant, and I'll continue to care for this just as with the care instructions. So keep the soil slightly moist and put a bit of water in the centre, occasionally changing it so that it hopefully thrives and grows to a mature plant and produces one of those really wonderful flowers that we'd expect in a few years' time. And then for the other pup, I'm going to do exactly the same. So I will remove the soil, cut it back at the base of the pup or where it meets the mother plant, and then pot it up in exactly the same way. So I've got my second pot of well draining soil there, and then I'll leave the mother plant in its own pot and enjoy the remaining colour that we've got from the flower stem and these lovely green leaves until they do eventually start to fade in a few months. So I've been following my own tips on how to grow my indoor jungle for less by buying reduced plants and also seeking out propagation opportunities. If you'd like to learn more about how to grow your indoor jungle for less, I'll link that video at the end. There's about 10 tips on ways you can increase your houseplant collection without breaking the bank. I hope you found this video useful in learning more about the Aechmea Fasciata Primera and how to care for it and propagate it. If you have found it useful, consider giving the video a like and subscribing, as we'll have new plant related content every week, usually on a Sunday. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments below and we'll respond to everyone. As always, thank you for watching Grow Your Wellbeing.